WWE mourns a legend. Hulk Hogan's final farewell will leave you speechless. Wrestling fans across the world are heartbroken as we take you inside the emotional last funeral procession of WWE icon Hulk Hogan. This is the farewell you never expected to see. In this emotional video, witness rare behind-the-scenes moments, heartfelt tributes from WWE superstars, and shocking scenes from the procession that shook the wrestling world. From legends like Ric Flair to today's megastars like Roman Reigns and John Cena, the entire WWE universe comes together to honor the immortal one. He was the larger-than-life figure who slammed giants, captivated millions, and became the face of professional wrestling for an entire generation. But now, the immortal one Hulk Hogan is gone. And what unfolded during his final funeral procession wasn't just a moment in history. It was a goodbye that broke the heart of the wrestling world. This isn't just about one man's death, it's about the end of an era. The silence that fell over WWE headquarters. The tears shed by legends in suits and ties, standing shoulder to shoulder by his casket. The fans who lined the streets in Hulkamania bandanas, clutching their action figures, weeping like they'd lost a member of their family. This is the untold story behind Hulk Hogan's final farewell. What really happened behind the scenes? And why did so many of wrestling's biggest names seem broken? It began just after dawn. A soft Florida sky stretched over Tampa as the sun gently rose, casting a golden glow over thousands of mourners. A motorcade began its slow roll from the funeral home to the procession route, but this wasn't any ordinary send-off. This was the farewell of Terry Bollea, the man who became Hulk Hogan, the same man who once told the world to say their prayers and eat their vitamins, now being laid to rest under a cloud of grief and disbelief. For the millions who watched him rise from the ashes of controversy, fame, and physical pain, it was a goodbye no one was ready to say. And yet, here it was. Real. Unfolding in front of us like a dream slipping into nightmare, the streets of Tampa were frozen in time. Police blocked intersections as the black hearse rolled past, draped in red and yellow flowers, with a small golden championship belt displayed delicately on the front windshield. Fans, some silent and others sobbing, held up homemade signs. "Thank you, Hulk. You slammed Andre, but you lifted us all. Real American forever." Chants of "Hogan, Hogan, Hogan" broke through the otherwise eerie stillness of the morning. For a moment, it didn't feel like a funeral. It felt like the WWE was mourning its foundation. And in many ways, it was. But behind the procession, inside the limousines that followed close behind, were faces rarely seen together outside the ring anymore. Ric Flair, Paul "Triple H" Levesque, John Cena, Shane McMahon, Roman Reigns. Even stars from AEW, quietly in attendance despite company rivalries. Some held white roses. Some held nothing but the weight of memories on their shoulders. Yet all wore black, their faces etched with the kind of pain that only comes when legends bury legends. For many, this wasn't just the end of Hulk Hogan's life. It was the final chapter of something sacred in professional wrestling, the superhero era, the larger-than-life storytelling, the connection between man and myth. It was Ric Flair who was first to step out as the procession reached the memorial site. Wearing dark glasses, a black overcoat, and a trembling jaw, he whispered to someone nearby, "He was supposed to outlive us all." Beside him, John Cena, quiet and unreadable, stared ahead with clenched fists. Cena, who'd often credited Hogan as his blueprint, had reportedly flown in overnight from a film set in Europe just to be present. No interviews. No red carpets. Just silence. Even Roman Reigns, known for his stoic demeanor, wiped away tears as he helped walk the casket into the ceremonial hall. Inside, the atmosphere was unlike anything wrestling fans could have imagined. This wasn't the glitzy production of WrestleMania or the high-octane energy of Raw. This was solemn, minimalistic, powerful. The stage, bathed in golden light, displayed only a single item, the classic Winged Eagle WWF Championship belt, the same title Hogan carried into the ring during his iconic run in the late 80s. Behind it, A massive portrait of Hogan in full red and yellow glory, arms raised to the heavens, the bandana still perched atop his head, the handlebar mustache as iconic as ever. His final pose frozen in time, and then came the tributes. Vince McMahon was not in attendance. According to sources close to the family, the former WWE chairman had sent a personal letter, which was read aloud by Triple H, whose voice cracked more than once as he spoke. The letter read, in part, "He was the man who helped build our empire. When Hulk Hogan entered the ring, the world watched. And when he left behind a legacy that can never be replaced." Triple H paused, swallowed hard, and continued, "WWE is not just a company. It's a family. And today, we bury our big brother." Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were honored with special mention, their NWO brotherhood with Hogan never forgotten. Hall, who passed in 2022, was remembered alongside Hogan, as the screen behind the stage played never-before-seen backstage footage of the trio laughing during a 1996 WCW promo shoot. It was raw, emotional, and jarring to see them young again, immortal for just a few minutes more. The entire WWE locker room had been given the day off. No TV tapings. No meet and greets. Just silence and remembrance. Backstage officials said the mood at WWE headquarters had been funereal for days, and morale was at an all-time low. Some wrestlers who'd never even met Hogan were reportedly in tears. "Because without him," one said anonymously, "none of us would be here." Roman Reigns, seated in the front row with Paul Heyman at his side, appeared particularly shaken. Just last year, Reigns had teased a possible in-ring segment with Hogan, a passing of the torch moment that never materialized due to Hogan's declining health. That unfulfilled promise seemed to hang in the air like FOG.at. The front of the hall, Hogan's daughter Brooke delivered a eulogy that shattered even the toughest faces in the room. With her voice trembling and her eyes red, she spoke not of the wrestler the world adored, but the father she loved. "He was my superhero. Not just in the ring, but at home. Even when he was broken, he still tried to make us laugh. Even when he was in pain, he still made sure we were okay. I used to think he was invincible. Maybe, in a way, he still is." One of the most haunting moments came when a recording of Hogan's voice played over the loudspeakers, a clip from a 2009 interview where he said, "When I go, I just want people to remember the good. The laughs. The matches. The hope. That's all I ever wanted to give." That line echoed through the room like thunder. Some guests reportedly couldn't hold back sobs. Others simply closed their eyes. When it came time to lower the casket into the burial chamber, 6 WWE superstars, John Cena, Randy Orton, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, The Undertaker, and Ric Flair, were called up as honorary pallbearers. A surprising 7th name was also announced, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Though absent from the room, The Rock had arranged to have his floral tribute, a massive arrangement shaped like a championship belt, carried in by staff and placed beside the casket. Outside, thousands of fans stood in a long, silent vigil. Many wore Hogan t-shirts. Some knelt on the sidewalk, praying. Others simply held hands. For a moment, the crowd started humming the familiar tune of Real American. No loud voices. No chants. Just a quiet, collective heartbeat. The kind that echoes through generations. The kind that says goodbye not just to a wrestler, but to the memories, dreams, and childhoods he carried on his back for decades. WWE Network would later release a special titled Immortal: The Final Days of Hulk Hogan, featuring exclusive behind-the-scenes footage from the week leading up to the funeral. It showed a much older, fragile Hulkster surrounded by family and close friends. In one clip, he was seen holding a replica of his old championship belt and whispering, "I still got one more match in me." Whether that match was symbolic or not, it shook fans to the core. Tributes poured in from around the world. From wrestlers past and present. From celebrities who grew up idolizing him. From fans who remembered what it meant to hear that entrance music, see that red and yellow blur hit the stage, cup his ear, and make you believe that good would always triumph over evil. Presidents tweeted. Movie stars cried. And children who never watched him live still felt the loss, as if they'd known him all their lives. Perhaps that was Hogan's greatest power, not the leg drop, not the charisma, not the crowd control, but his ability to make you feel like you were part of something. That you mattered. That Hulkamania wasn't just a gimmick, it was a movement. A feeling. A brotherhood. The procession came to its final halt at a private mausoleum just outside Clearwater Beach. There, in the quiet Florida breeze, Hulk Hogan's remains were entombed beneath a plaque that simply read, Terry Hulk Hogan Bollea, the Immortal One. 1953 to 2025. Still running wild. There were no fireworks. No entrance music. Just silence. And maybe that's how he wanted it. Not with a bang, but with love. As the final prayers were whispered and the last flowers laid beside the tomb, many in attendance stayed behind, unwilling to leave. It wasn't just about saying goodbye, it was about holding on to the feeling that, somehow, Hulk Hogan was still with them. Ric Flair remained seated long after the formal service had ended, staring at the engraved plaque, motionless. At one point, someone approached him, a young fan in a Hulkamania shirt, and handed him a hand-drawn portrait of Hogan in his prime. Flair accepted it without a word, clutched it to his chest, and closed his eyes. For those who witnessed it, it was one of the most raw and human moments of the entire day. Two legends, bound not just by their careers, but by friendship and the shared burden of being immortal in a world that forgets how to let go. Later that evening, a private candlelight vigil was held in a gated Tampa estate where many of Hogan's closest friends had gathered. This wasn't for the cameras. No press was allowed. No social media posts. Just stories, memories, and tears shared over whiskey and worn-out photographs. Kevin Nash reportedly read aloud from a handwritten letter he had once received from Hogan while recovering from injury. In the letter, Hogan had written, "We're warriors, brother. But even warriors fall. Just make sure when you do, you rise louder than the crowd." Those words now felt prophetic. Everyone in the room, from Shawn Michaels to Kurt Angle, sat in a circle of silence, each person reflecting on how deeply Hogan's presence had shaped their own lives and careers. One attendee, a WWE producer who had worked backstage during Hogan's last Raw appearance, recalled an unforgettable moment that now carried new meaning. Hogan had pulled him aside and said, "Don't ever waste your time trying to live forever. Just make sure what you leave behind makes someone want to keep going." That quote would later become a trending phrase across wrestling social media as fans and superstars alike began using it as a final farewell. What you leave behind, that's what this entire day was about. The mourning didn't stop at the memorial. Across the world, impromptu fan gatherings popped up in parks, comic book shops, wrestling gyms, and high school auditoriums. In New York City, the Empire State Building was lit up in red and yellow. In Los Angeles, fans gathered outside the Staples Center with candles and posters. In Tokyo, a tribute video aired on national television showing Hogan's match against the Great Muta in 1993. Across every continent, the wrestling universe stood still for just a moment, united by the ache of loss, the echo of brother, and the memory of one man who changed everything. WWE, meanwhile, announced a multi-night tribute event titled Immortal Forever, set to span Raw, SmackDown, and a dedicated pay-per-view special. It would feature rematches of some of Hogan's most iconic bouts, reenacted by current superstars in his honor. A young Austin Theory was reportedly handpicked by producers to portray 1980s Hogan in a tribute segment. The responsibility weighed heavy on him. "I just hope I can do justice," Theory tweeted, "to the man who made me believe I could become a WWE superstar in the first place." The Undertaker also broke his silence, appearing via video at the memorial special. Dressed in his trademark all-black, eyes shadowed by the brim of his hat, he delivered a message that sent chills through fans worldwide. Some people perform, others inspire. Hogan did both. He taught us how to rise, how to fight, and how to love this business with every breath in our body. Rest easy, brother. We'll carry the weight now. Perhaps the most unexpected tribute came from CM Punk. Known for his criticisms of WWE legends in the past, Punk took to the microphone during a dark segment after SmackDown went off-air. In a trembling voice, he said, "There are things I've said about Hulk Hogan that I can't take back. But tonight, I say this. If you've ever stepped foot in this ring, you owe something to that man. Respect." The arena erupted. Not with cheers, but with a long, emotional standing ovation. It wasn't about brands anymore. Or rivalries. Or politics. It was about legacy. In the weeks following the funeral, new stories began surfacing, not just of Hogan's career, but of the man few got to see. The man who visited children's hospitals in secret, dressed in full gear, because he didn't want them to know the real Terry Bollea was tired or hurting. The man who once paid the rent of a struggling fan's family after reading a letter sent to WWE. The man who, even in retirement, never said no to a handshake or a smile. These stories weren't PR stunts. They weren't meant for headlines. They were real, quiet, unseen. And they painted the picture of someone who gave everything until there was nothing left to give. One of Hogan's longtime neighbors in Clearwater shared a poignant memory with a local news station. She said every morning, before the sun rose, he'd walk the beach alone. Sometimes barefoot. Sometimes with a cigar. He said it helped him feel normal. Helped him remember the kid who once dreamed of being something bigger. That kid, born Terry Gene Bollea, had become Hulk Hogan. And, somehow, he had remained both. Back at WWE headquarters, a bronze statue of Hogan was quietly unveiled in the WWE Hall of Fame lobby. Unlike the action-posed statues of other legends, Hogan's was different. It showed him mid-hug, arms open wide, smiling. The plaque beneath it read, "To the world, he was Hulk Hogan. To us, he was hope." Stephanie McMahon, who had grown up watching Hogan headline events with her father Vince, posted a rare and emotional message. There are very few people in this world who define an entire generation. Hulk was one of them. And even now, I can still hear him backstage, hyping up the boys, saying, "Let's go steal the show, brother." I hope we still do. But as much as Hogan's passing was mourned, his life was also celebrated. A montage aired on WWE programming showing some of his most iconic moments, body slamming Andre the Giant, standing tall at WrestleMania, ripping his shirt off to a roaring crowd. But the most powerful clip came at the end, an aged Hogan backstage, watching a current-day match from the curtain. He turns to the camera, smiles, and says, "If they remember me, I did my job." Fade to black. Whoosh. Silence. Weeks later, fan mail still flooded WWE's Florida office. Letters from people who grew up with Hogan as their hero. One note, written in crayon by a 7-year-old fan, simply read, "Dear Hulk Hogan, I miss you. I hope heaven has a ring so you can wrestle God. Love, Joey." That letter was placed into a time capsule organized by WWE staff, set to be opened in 2053. The 100th anniversary of Hogan's birth. The world will move on. Wrestlers will come and go. Titles will change hands. But what Hulk Hogan built will never fade. He didn't just headline pay-per-views. He didn't just sell out arenas. He gave fans from Boston to Botswana a reason to believe in something larger than life. A reason to believe in goodness, strength, and the idea that one man, in red and yellow tights, could lift an entire generation onto his shoulders and say, "What you gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" Now, as the lights dim across the WWE universe and the curtain falls for the final time, one truth remains: Hulk Hogan may be gone, but Hulkamania is eternal. In the months that followed Hulk Hogan's passing, a subtle shift rippled through the world of professional wrestling. Not just in WWE, but across AW and JPW, Impact Wrestling, and even in underground indie promotions. There was a noticeable change, not just in tone, but in the way performers carried themselves. As if the passing of the Immortal One had reminded them all of their own mortality. The locker room wasn't just quieter, it was more reverent. Superstars began wearing red and yellow armbands during matches, not as a gimmick, but as a quiet salute. Veteran wrestlers took more time with younger talent, passing down stories that once echoed through Hogan's own generation. Even the fans began showing up differently, wearing vintage Hulkamania shirts, waving real American signs, and reviving chants that hadn't been heard since the early 90s. The cultural impact was undeniable. ESPN aired a three-part documentary titled When the Lights Fade. The Life of Hulk Hogan, exploring his influence on American pop culture beyond wrestling. It featured interviews with everyone from Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger to Oprah Winfrey and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. The docuseries revealed that Hogan had been quietly funding scholarships for underprivileged athletes for nearly a decade, never telling the media, never expecting recognition. He didn't want praise, Stallone shared through tears. He wanted people to win. Meanwhile, WWE fans began petitioning for WrestleMania to include an annual Immortal Battle Royal, an event held in Hogan's honor. The proposal quickly gained traction online, collecting over 1 million signatures within the first 2 weeks. WWE officially responded during an emotional episode of Monday Night Raw, announcing that the inaugural Hulk Hogan Memorial match would headline the WrestleMania pre-show. The crowd's reaction was thunderous, chanting Hogan's name for a full 2 minutes as commentators stood silent in reverence. Backstage, things remained heavy. At the Performance Center in Orlando, a large mural was painted Hogan in mid-leg drop, midair, surrounded by a golden halo. New trainees were instructed to touch the mural before entering the ring each day, a ritual now dubbed the Hogan Tap. It wasn't about worship. It was about remembering who made all of this possible. As one trainer said during an open house event, "You don't get to wrestle here unless you understand whose shoulders you're standing on." Among the most affected by Hogan's death was his longtime rival-turned-friend, Randy Savage's brother, Lanny Poffo. Though Savage had passed years before, Lanny revealed in an interview that Hogan had called him every birthday since 2011, just to say, "Your brother would be proud." The final call came just months before Hogan's death. "He didn't say goodbye," Poffo said, "but it felt like one." Even Sting, a rival who stood on the other side of the WCW wars, spoke candidly about their complicated friendship. "We fought. We disagreed. But when I lost my mom, Hogan was the first one to call. He didn't say much. Just, 'I'm here, brother.' That's all I needed." The interview went viral, with fans calling it one of the most honest tributes. As time passed, even the youngest fans began to understand who Hulk Hogan really was. Schools across Florida began using his story in motivational assemblies, not just for his achievements, but for his resilience. How he battled back from surgeries, lawsuits, public controversies, and personal loss. How he never stayed down for long. One high school created a scholarship called the Hulk Hogan Heart Award, given annually to a student who exemplified courage through adversity. But perhaps the most poetic tribute came from a surprising place: the U.S. military. A National Guard unit stationed overseas recorded a viral video saluting Hogan, explaining that many of them grew up watching him before enlisting. One soldier, visibly emotional, said, "When I was scared, I remembered what Hogan said: believe in yourself and never back down." He didn't just hype us up. He gave us hope when we needed it most. The video was later aired on the Titantron before a WWE SmackDown episode, drawing roaring applause from the crowd. It wasn't just the wrestling world that mourned, it was the world. Churches, barbershops, schools, veterans halls, all holding impromptu Hulk Hogan memorial nights. People shared their stories, where they were when Hogan slammed Andre the Giant, or when he turned heel and joined the NWO. These weren't just wrestling memories. They were life memories. Proof that Hogan hadn't just entertained, he had imprinted himself on the human experience. Still, there were whispers in the wind. Questions that hung in the air. Would wrestling ever feel the same again? Could WWE move forward without the man who, for decades, had been its spiritual heartbeat? The answer came in the form of WrestleMania. On the night of the Immortal Battle Royal, the stadium was packed. Every screen lit up with a countdown. Not to the next match, but to the moment Hogan was meant to walk down that ramp one final time. At 0, a thunderous guitar riff ripped through the speakers. The opening chords of Real American filled the stadium. And in that instant, everything stopped. The lights dimmed. The crowd rose. On the screen, a holographic projection of Hulk Hogan in his prime. Bandana on, muscles bulging, finger pointed, walked toward the ring. The fans didn't care that it wasn't real. They cheered like it was 1987 all over again. Commentators couldn't speak. Security guards were crying. Even Triple H, watching from the production booth, whispered into the headset, "Let them have this." And they did. The hologram entered the ring, cupped his ear, flexed, and saluted the crowd. On cue, the wrestlers in the Battle Royal emerged from backstage, not in their usual ring gear, but in red and yellow variants. The match that followed wasn't about competition. It was a tribute. A ballet of punches, slams, poses, and callbacks to Hogan's greatest hits. Every wrestler took a moment to drop the leg, flex their biceps, or shout, "What ya gonna do?" to the delight of the roaring fans. In the end, it was Cody Rhodes who stood tall, tears in his eyes, looking to the heavens before mimicking Hogan's classic post-match muscle pose. The crowd erupted. Not because Cody won, but because, in that moment, Hulkamania was alive again, if only for a heartbeat. Later that night, in the backstage hallway once walked by legends, Roman Reigns stood staring at a photograph of himself and Hogan taken years ago. When a reporter asked him how he felt about the tribute match, Reigns simply said, "I hope we made him proud." Then he turned, walked down the hallway, and disappeared into the night. By now, Hogan's tomb had become a place of pilgrimage. Fans made trips from all over the country just to leave flowers, letters, t-shirts, and action figures. Some prayed. Others just stood there, hoping to feel something. And many did. Because the grave of Hulk Hogan wasn't just a resting place. It had become a monument, not to a man, but to a movement, and maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. We live. We fight. We fall. But if we're lucky, we leave behind a story that becomes bigger than ourselves. Hulk Hogan did that. He gave people courage. He made children dream. He made grown men believe in heroes. He reminded the world that strength wasn't just in your muscles, it was in your spirit. So the next time you hear those iconic words, echoing in some distant YouTube tribute, or see a young fan raise his hand to his ear in imitation, remember that somewhere, in the great arena above, the immortal one is flexing, smiling, and whispering, "I told you, brother." Hulkamania never dies. Even as the wrestling world slowly began adjusting to a future without Hulk Hogan, the aftershocks of his passing continued to ripple through every corner of sports entertainment. There was a grief that hung in the air like humidity, heavy, lingering, unshakable. WWE creative meetings reportedly opened with a moment of silence for weeks following the funeral. And even months later, random chants of Hogan. Hogan would break out in arenas with no prompting, just pure, unfiltered emotion from fans still processing the loss of their hero. Backstage, there was talk that the company had permanently retired Hogan's entrance theme, Real American, but Vince McMahon's absence from Hogan's funeral had left many unanswered questions. Triple H, now fully at the helm of WWE's creative vision, reportedly made the final call to preserve Hogan's legacy as sacred, uncommercialized, untouched. "We don't sell Hogan now," he reportedly told production staff. "We honor him." But honoring him proved more difficult than anyone anticipated. At an emotional Hall of Fame ceremony later that year, every inductee dedicated their award to Hogan in some form. Even those who had never shared a ring with him spoke of his impact as if he were a foundational figure in their own story. Rhea Ripley, tears streaming down her face, recalled watching Hogan's match with The Rock at WrestleMania X8 as a child. "That was the moment I knew I wanted to do this," she said, her voice cracking. He didn't just command the ring. He commanded hope. A statue of Hogan was erected outside the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, a towering image of the Hulkster pointing toward the sky. A young child hoisted on one shoulder, championship belt slung across the other. Beneath it, an inscription read, "He carried us when we couldn't carry ourselves." Outside of WWE, the tributes kept coming. In Hollywood, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson hosted a memorial charity gala in Hogan's name, raising over $10 million for children's cancer research, a cause close to Hogan's heart after losing several young fans to the disease over the years. During the gala, The Rock took the stage and delivered a powerful, unrehearsed speech. "I used to pretend I was him in my living room," he said. "The boots, the bandana, the promos in the mirror. He was larger than life. And then, one day, I met him. And he was even larger." It wasn't just wrestling or Hollywood that grieved. It was America. The world. For decades, Hulk Hogan had symbolized strength. Not just physical, but moral. He told kids to say their prayers, eat their vitamins, and believe in themselves. He stood up to